Hey, good morning. Thank you for listening. This is Women Talk Construction. I'm Christy. I'm here with Angela, my co host. And today we have our guest co host for Women Talk Construction joining us again. And she's going to be telling us a little bit of a different perspective of what it's like being in the construction industry. And her generation is much younger than my generation. So it's been very nice to learn what it is that our younger professionals need in the workforce, especially in non-traditional careers. So thank you for being here today, Angela. And how's everything going with you today?
It's going great, Christy.
Good.
I'm so
Good.
excited to be here with Alex.
I know, I am too. And Alex, how are you doing today?
I am great. I am so glad to be here with the two of you. Thanks so much for having me on again.
Absolutely.
Uh,
So we landed on the last conversation we had on a couple of things that I really wanted to point out to the audience that you really enjoyed about your job. And I just want to ask, what was that aha moment for you that you were like, I really like this. I know you applied, and not everybody knows your story. And one day we'll be able to tell your whole story, but you applied at 84 because you needed a job. You didn't think you were going to be there forever. So what was that aha moment for you?
Yeah, the construction industry wasn't really something that I had considered before needing a summer job one year. And I think it was once I realized how little I knew about construction and how much there is to learn that you could never be bored, that I
Nice.
realized that I might be somewhere I might stay.
Nice. And 6 years later and 30 years later for me, I'm still never bored. So that is so true. So I wanted to ask one more question. So one of the things that is really, really important for us being in the construction industry, in the building sector, and you were working in a retail location for 84 at the time when you started, how hard of a transition was it for you to learn how to read blueprints? Because obviously that's part of the job, somehow part of the job. And if it isn't, then you definitely want to be inquiring and learning more just so that you can be better at it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an important skill. I was really lucky to be working under someone with a lot of patience and who was really good at explaining things in a way that anybody could understand. But I think one of the most useful things he did for me was when I first started, he brought me out to a few job sites, some houses that didn't have any drywall up or anything, so you could see the bones, and just kind of walked me through how and why everything was put together. Because if you
Nice.
can understand the why, then you don't need to just memorize every piece. It makes sense. There's a flow, and then the 2D drawings looking at start to make more sense.
Thank you for sharing that. As young professionals considering entering the construction industry, it's just good for them to know that they have some hurdles to overcome. And
mhm.
maybe it's a hurdle they love, maybe it's a hurdle they don't love. When I saw my first set of blueprints, I fell in love. And I had an accounting background, so doing takeoffs and adding figures not only on paper but in my head was really easy for me. So I loved that it was easy for me, but I also loved that I had so much to learn and every blueprint was different. Like I loved what you said about never getting bored. And I was easily, not really bored, but I would easily learn a role and then I'd be ready for more and there wouldn't be anything left. And I really, at several roles before I got in construction. So I can totally relate to that. So thank you for answering those questions for those kids or young professionals that are considering being in our field. I know Angela's got a few questions for you too. I'm
I
excited to hear.
do. I do. Well, I'll get us kicked off, and I agree. You can never get bored in this industry. I just left a safety meeting, and that's its own little world. So,
Yes, it is.
it truly is. My first question for you, Alex, is how do you think that your experience working in construction has shaped your leadership style as a corporate employee? Because, I mean, we hear about a lot of women even wanting to switch from like another industry to come in construction. So I think some of your feedback can even help them understand how they can progress in this industry. So share with us how that experience was and how it shaped your leadership style.
Well, my position as a corporate employee at 84 means that I'm here to support our customers and our associates. And I think to be able to support somebody well, you really have to understand what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And without having the experience of being in it every day myself, I don't think I would quite be able to grasp what their day-to-day looks like in order to be as supportive and helpful as I would like to be.
That was an awesome answer.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was going to say that's as good as that gets right there.
I know.
Did you face any, when we know that we face skepticism, our industry, no matter what gender you are, we face skepticism when we're new on the job. People just assume that you don't know what you're talking about or assume that you have a lot to learn. So tell me, did you face any skepticism or resistance from colleagues in general when you came to work there?
Of course. I mean, I think we all see some of that no matter what role we're in, but maybe especially in this industry. I think what's most important is to make sure you're honoring yourself and where you want to be and the path that your life needs to be on, while also honoring and respecting where you've been, right? So, for example, when I took this role, it could be difficult for any business to lose an employee. So, to try to make sure that that transition was as smooth as possible, moving from the store to corporate, I made sure to build in a month that I was still there and could train the next person and make sure all the T's were lined and the I's were dotted, and just make sure that that transition was as smooth as possible for the customers and the employees at the store. And then I made sure to keep myself available for a time after in case there were questions. Just make sure my leaving didn't create any undue stress for anybody.
I'm glad you mentioned that because, you are going to everybody faces skepticism by their peers at some point in time or another. And you kind of shared a little bit, but not a lot about the skepticism because you were focused on bringing your best self to work every day. And I love that. And then when you got the opportunity to take a corporate role, instead of just sitting back and waiting for it to happen, you were preparing your customers and those that were in leadership roles for the fact that you might want to move up. And I think it's very important for our audience to know that you have to take those first steps yourself. Nobody's going to do that for you. If you want to move into another role, then find your replacement, or at least start using your soft skills to have conversations with your general manager about your aspirations to be in a different role. So thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of times, people will stay in a job that they really may or may not love, but they want to move up and don't know how to do it. And sometimes it takes what's within you to prepare the people around you for that change. And that is true leadership. So you were being a leader then, and probably didn't even know it because you were preparing yourself and preparing the store and the customers for your transition before you even got the opportunity to take another job for corporate. So I love that. And I think that's a great way to, let our young professionals know, just to take up the reins and move, right?
Oh, yeah, I totally agree.
In a respectful way.
I'll ask the next question. So
That was a lot.
hey, I loved what both of you said because, I mean, Alex, you're rocking it. You're doing such greatness.
She is.
And then Christy just said exactly what you have to do if you want to keep moving up and growing. My next question, actually, You kind of alluded to it in my other original question, but I want you to kind of say more about it. In your opinion, what are some key qualities or characteristics that helped you succeed in your transition from, being on the job site to the corporate role that you took on?
Well, I think she's frozen. She just sent me a message,
Oh,
so I'm
she
really
did?
glad that we have a text box open during this time. Let's see. I told her to jump out and jump back in, so she might be back in a second. So, anyway, let's talk a little bit about what she just said. How
Yeah,
important is it for us to advocate for ourselves?
extremely. And it's very hard to do.
It is very hard to
I
do.
mean, I've struggled with it throughout my career.
Mhm. I still
I
struggle with it
Do you?
sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't struggle with advocating for others, but
Oh,
I
that's so
struggle.
easy.
I know, it's so
It's
easy,
when
but
you're doing it for yourself, it's so hard.
it feels weird, doesn't it?
It
But it's so
it
important.
does.
It's so important. Nobody's
It
gonna recognize you if you don't give them a reason or at least bring it up,
I
right?
agree. But
And
wouldn't
she
you
was so
say
good at that.
Oh, yes, it's the way you do it. It's just like
Mhm.
what you were talking about too. It's the way you do it. And I think that's where I get hung up,
Yeah, me
is
too. Like, what
I'm
should I
thinking about
say?
how should I
How
do
should I
this?
say it? I
Yes.
wanna be respectful to my boss. I wanna be respectful to my peers. So, how do I do this in a way? And that's what soft skills are, right? And I think we're
Yes.
missing a lot of those because who even knows why? But I think soft skills have gone out the window over the years. I'm not sure how, but that's what soft skills are, right?
Well, it's
Recognizing
communication.
it is. Recognizing different personalities and then
Yeah.
learning how to speak to each of those personalities in a way that they don't get offended or they're not
Yes.
upset
Right.
about the fact that you wanna transition out of their location,
That's
right?
right.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Where they're
yeah.
proud of you, you can have that soft conversation or soft skill that, you're having conversations with your, boss and you wanna be respectful, but there's nothing wrong with saying, "Hey, I would really if this opportunity ever arose, I would think I would really want to do something like that. What do you think?" That to me is like the easiest way to get buy-in from anybody is asking what they think, whether
Yeah.
it's your superior or it's somebody, these are my thoughts. This is where I'd like to go with my life. What do you think about it? I would love to have your input. And that's always a great segue into, um, yeah, it's a great segue into the opportunity when it
Yeah.
arises, right? You already knew that I was
Yeah.
looking, and now this opportunity arose. Well, I would really like to apply for it. At that point, the general manager is prepared, right? At
Yeah.
that point, the manager is not only prepared, but he's probably already been thinking in his mind, what will I do to replace that person too? And I love that. Um,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
you're not putting your company in a bind, you're not putting the manager in a bind, you're just speaking what you want.
Mhm. Wouldn't you say too that some of this comes from, like, the labels that have been placed on a lot of different conversations as, like, conflict resolution or
Yeah,
difficult conversations? Yes, these might be difficult, but they're not meant to be like a full-blown conflict, like,
right,
type
right.
discussion. It's just communication.
It is, and it's not conflict, and
No,
we shouldn't be calling it
or
conflict.
really
It's
difficult, right?
Yeah, it's not even
It's just a
difficult. I mean, it's difficult,
conversation.
maybe on the inside of us,
Oh, yeah.
but if we look at it as more of a conversation and asking for advice,
Yeah.
that makes it easier, right?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
then we are respecting the people that we're talking to, so it's not hard at that
Mm.
point.
Exactly.
So, it looks like Alex is having a hard time getting back on, but I've really enjoyed having this conversation today about those things, right? About advocating for yourself, about
Mhm.
just using those soft skills to make your boss aware that you want to move up and then, go from there. Learn their personality and then try to speak to them and communicate with them in a way that they're going to hear you and understand you. Thanks
I
for
yeah.
thanks so much for being on today, Angela, and we'll have Alex back on, very soon. So excited to talk more about how we can just transition better and pivot better in our industry. Thanks for watching,
Thank
everyone.
you.